Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to my new video titled So this is a full look at the new and improved re-release of Doom on the Super Nintendo, done by original programmer Randal Linden in association with Bitmap Bureau and Limited Run Games. And I'll also be joined by Randall himself, who headed up this massive project. But I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Randal Linden and I'm a computer programmer. I was born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I started programming when I was 11, and at 13 I made a Centipede clone called Bubbles for the Commodore 64. Then I did the 64 emulator and the 64 emulator 2 for the Amiga, followed by Dragon's Lair for the Amiga. And that brings us up to Doom, which I did for the Super Nintendo back in 1995.
So let's not waste any more time and take a brief look at the original Super Nintendo version. Doom on the Super Nintendo was published originally by Williams in 1995, using the Super FX chip to bring this FPS to the console. It was not a port but a completely remade version by Randal Linden, using his Reality engine designed for this game. Being a 1995 release meant that a lot of compromises had to be made, from frame rate, graphics alterations, missing music and levels, no circle strafing, and more. Despite all this, it was a valiant effort, far from perfect, but that's the full reason why we've seen a new iteration. And Randall gets his second chance to bring Doom to the Super Nintendo the way he originally wanted it to be, plus a whole lot more. So I first asked Randall what kicked off the desire to go back to this game 30 or so odd years later for this revamp.
About 2.5 years ago, I did an interview with Digital Foundry, and one of the interviewers, Audie Sorley, said that he worked at Limited Run Games and asked if I would be interested in doing an up-to-date version of Doom for the SNES. I said, hell yes, and the rest is history.
There's a lot of new additions to the SNES version, so we'll start with the graphics, with the two major updates being the frame rate, which has now been boosted significantly. The original ran at roughly 10 frames per second, but that's now doubled to 20, and when you play it you feel it immediately, and boosts the accuracy of the gameplay and the pace of the game. The original Super Nintendo version had 22 levels from Ultimate Doom, which meant that there was a lot missing, including the entire fourth episode. All these levels are now back, so an additional 14 stages, which also brings more graphical variety overall, and basically makes the SNES version as close as it could get to the PC Ultimate Doom release from 1995.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Bash Tishby presents.
I then asked for a rundown what's in the new cartridge used to bring Doom 2025 back to the Super Nintendo.
The hardware is pretty amazing and was designed by Matt and Gavin at Bitmap Bureau. The core processor is a brand new Raspberry Pi RP2350B running at 150 megahertz, and that's used to emulate the Super FX. The Super FX code is processed by an ahead-of-time conversion program that generates C code, which is then compiled by the Raspberry Pi SDK. This allowed us to keep the same look and feel of Doom SNES, but with faster and smoother gameplay. There's also the larger memory space with 4 megs of storage instead of 2 megs, and that made it possible to add all the missing levels and the new features.
The original sound for the SNES version was actually pretty good, capturing those classic sound effects very well, as was pumping renditions of the DOS original tunes. With all the levels now present means tons of new music rearranged have been added back into the game, and it's almost impossible to tell the old from the new, it's so seamless. You also have access to a cool music player through the in-game codes. I then asked Randall about the process of using modern tools to do the revamp as opposed to the 1995 original.
The development this time was much easier compared to 1995 because of the powerful tools like the Mason emulator and the FX Pack Pro hardware. My development tools are the same and they run on an Amiga, so I use WinUAE on a PC, but I used to use an Amiga 2000 and an Intelligent Systems Super NES ICE SE hardware.
Gameplay has also been improved overall. Besides the frame rate, the most obvious is circle strafing, which is now available, making DOS-style moves, circling enemies and unloading hot lead onto them without any damage a total possibility, and making it generally easier to maneuver around the levels. The original had side strafing, but it's definitely not the same thing. Also, having codes for completed levels and level selections makes playing it in smaller doses much easier and more convenient. The new custom Super Nintendo controller with rumble feature is a super cool addition to it, and I asked Randall whose idea it was to implement this.
SNES is one of the few consoles that doesn't have rumble support, so when I asked Limited Run Games about adding a rumble controller, they were excited and knew that Retrobit would be happy to help make it happen.
The laundry list of additions are long, and we've touched on most of them. Other notable features though include the Nightmare difficulty making its comeback with respawning enemies for all you narcissists out there, plus end screens for certain chapters. I then asked what was the biggest hurdle programming-wise that they had to overcome while making this game.
The hardest technical challenge was improving the overall speed and frame rate. The game runs at 20 frames per second now, and it used to average 10 frames per second, so it's a big jump. The work required to optimize the entire engine, plus adapting the code to the new hardware, was complicated, but I think the results are worth it.
The new limited run Super Nintendo controller is very cool. It's a bit chunkier than a normal Super NES controller, which makes it much easier for me to hold and handle, and the rumble feature will not only be used in this game, but for future Super NES projects as well, and is obviously compatible with original hardware and all regular games. And it's definitely my go-to controller now for the system. I then asked Randall how long the entire process has been for bringing this version to completion.
The project has definitely been a labor of love spanning 2 years of long hours and very hard work. I hope people enjoy what we've created, and maybe we'll do more like it in the future. There are a number of games that use a similar engine, and I'd really like to do Doom 2, or Heretic, or Hexen, or Sigil with the Reality Engine 3.
Overall, this is the way to do a re-release, especially a game that had room for lots of improvement. I really hope to see more of these kinds of projects released in the future, and you can tell all the real passion that went into its creation. And my final question for Randall was, what were his personal favorite additions to this new version?
I have 3 favorites. First, the improved speed and frame rate, which really makes the game visceral and fun. Second would be the rumble technology, because it adds so much to the gameplay. And third is the additional levels. I like the fact that all the levels are now present in the game.
And I'll leave links in the video description to Limited Run's pre-order page, which goes live on July 11th, 2025, with 2 versions, a standard and a full-on special edition, as well as access to that rumble controller with a cool Doom decal design. So please check them out.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I just want to do a quick shout out to Audie over at Limited Run Games for helping organize this. Also for Randall for giving up his time to tell us a little bit about the background info about this awesome new game. Thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time, and if you can please like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.